Same tab. Okay. You'll get used to this thing. I don't know if you.
I won't pay attention to it. I don't, as I say, I don't know where we're going. We'll see. Testing 1, 2, 3.
That's, I was thinking about how to start, and either what was in my mind is just going through chronology of your life, just so I have something to start with that I could take some notes on and listen to, or start with whether you want to set a tone or if there's something that's important for you to say. To start, because often you have a way of, wanting people to understand something before you start, and that's often helpful, I think.
That's a good question. Obviously, what I say now, I couldn't say when I was born. And what I would say in a phrase now is that
It doesn't have to be. What I want to do at some point is start chronologically, and it doesn't have to be chronologically, but that makes sense to me. And figure as best you can. It's like, what's your earliest memory, and what were you thinking then, and then how did you come to whatever you came to?
I could say, first of all, without question today, a presupposition to where I'm at is my faith and as a starting point of everything, and that translates to a recognition. This probably doesn't make sense. I'm just bubbling it out. Translates to individually and collectively. That's something I'd like to come back to. That it can't be one or the other. Individually and collectively. The calling that I have in life has to do with the recognition that folks have no meaning in their lives today. And at best, we see what I would consider a false meaning. And people haven't heard me say this yet, but we can come back to all of this later.
Sure.
A false meaning, and that's why in Project Neighbors, I bristle when we talk about Project Neighbors as building houses, The false meaning has to do with fighting hard to give folks in a world in which the poor are getting poor and the rich are getting richer, giving folks better housing, better food, or food. I would call that a false meaning. That is not the depth of what's the problem today. Poorly said. Um, those fights are necessary, and I support them. That's been the fight of the left for many, many years, and I certainly support them. But those are necessary in the survival sense of the meaning of the word necessary. Change that has to take place. And there's a lot to be said on that, up and down. But coming from that core of faith, I am convinced that there's something that's a false necessity, that has nothing to do with life, that has to do with survival. And as I've said many times, man can't choose life unless she survives. But it's in that choosing of life that is the moral imperative that we need to be working on for change today. And that would be the only revolution that makes sense to me. To survive for survival's sake is not revolutionary to me. Clear as mud, I know, but these are things that are... and I've come to that from a long, crazy, weird history. I've been through periods where within what I've been given, which isn't a hell of a lot, what I've been given is the faith, which is a hell of a lot. But aside from that, I haven't been given a hell of a lot. There's no way I can compete athletically with many people or in the academic circles with many people, or with the staying power of researchers, whether it's legal, medical, or whatever, with many people. That hasn't been the strength to help me see. But in that process, I have seen that knocking yourself out and working for the poor, economically poor, I rather quickly saw that that's really not revolutionary, and that my faith calls me to be a revolutionary. I'm fighting for words here. When Gingrich makes a revolution, I would define it differently.
Well, they always try to steal our language.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I knew way back there the language was stolen when Max Factor made the revolution soon after Martin Luther King made the revolution on TV commercials. But so that's on one end. And I have occasionally been asked, it's funny, I've been asked the question. I told Paul Schreiner the other day when I was asked the question at the Big Wheel the other day by Mr. Saylor, a developer, Walt, why do you do what you do? That's a rare question to be presented to me in Valparaiso. That was not rare by well-to-do, middle-class college students in Chicago. I had been asked that question many times. And of course, I was surprised the other day, and my answer was, he said, make it brief. It was very brief. And I said, I can't do anything other than I'm doing, you know. But it's much deeper than that. And to college students, I did try very hard to recognize that they're young, inexperienced, and did not have traditional backgrounds, no reference points, and so I had to couch my answer recognizing where they're coming from. Um, I can remember a Colorado college. I don't know if you enjoy these things come to my head.
Absolutely. No, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to start somewhere and go.
We'll see.
And we'll.
I remember a college student, Colorado College, 6 weeks into my seminar, which is some kind of babbling I'm doing now almost, and in a sense. After class, he stayed, and he said, "Walt," he says, "I'm rich, I'm good looking, I'm a senior, I got it made when I graduate. I've got girls coming out of my ears. I've got a Porsche. You have really fucked me up." He says, "I don't have any answers now. You've totally confused me. I don't know where I'm coming from, but I don't disagree with anything you've said." And I said, "Well, wow, I'm a good teacher." That was not atypical of my experiences with these folks. I don't want to dwell on that now because I'm not even thinking about that. But I think that what he had heard was some objective realities of what's happening today that's hard to dispute, that no one wants to hear, on the one hand. On the other hand, he saw and heard a reference point that he is not familiar with. He saw age, a man who has traditional reference points that somehow or another gave him a base to question things. And I think that he grasped at something there, because one of the things that we need to talk about, which is very, very serious, our grandkids are growing up, our kids are growing up without any reference points. These kinds of questions were not asked, I don't think, to the other staff members too much, who were caught up in the political combative mainstream of the day, period. I don't know if you follow that.
Sure. But, no, it's fine. Exactly.
And I put something on the table that, I repeat, that he had a hard time seeing what's wrong with the analysis on the one hand and the reference point on the other hand. Now, another big headline kind of thing, I call, no, that would get too complicated.
Don't worry about it, because all of these things we can follow through.
Yeah. I guess I call what's the Grand Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov is a very important book to me, and the chapter on the Grand Inquisitor is very important. We won't dwell on that now. I just want to say that the Grand Inquisitor today, who is, quote, no one, unquote, knows whether there's a person that's temporary in power as president or dictator or whatever figurehead he or she is in government, They know that today you can't control the people by having the world's largest secret police, the world's largest army, all strings to all welfare of all kinds, that feeding a person is not enough. They have to be loved. Now, why is that? Why do you have to be loved when you got all power and control, man? You know, and that's the one thing that needs to be talked about in this. Would have to be a lengthy discourse. Is how is that love accomplished? By top down, the power. One way is what I call spiritualism. All manners of spiritualism are both demonstrated by top and bottom today and are encouraged, as long as it doesn't critique Monday, Sunday is whenever it is. Spiritualism is extremely good pacifier to the people. Way back there, it used to be Mardi Gras, and just to give an example, wee bit of an example, Mardi Gras, and in Germany it's called Fasching. For a few weeks, you could call important people in the corporate, political, state world any name you want. You know, you can get it all out and make fun of them and have parades with caricatures and anything you want. And they would participate. But it's a Sunday trip. It's not a Monday trip. It's not for real. It's in that light that spiritualism from TV evangelists to God knows what is a way in which we got to talk about these things, but a way in which the state will not be questioned. And no matter how much we want to talk about what I call a political illusion, no matter how much we're anti-politicians today, the state has never been so called upon by the people who are the most anti-political, anti-politicians and so forth. I mean, take the Christian right and so forth. I mean, without politics, they're dead. You with me a little? Mm-hmm. They're dead. And that's an important subject to me because from my core, my center, biblically, politics is one of the lesser games to be played in society. Our problem is it's a life and death game in the real world today. But in truth, it should be one of the lesser games. That's why we have to be in it. There's no way we can escape it. And it's called demythologized, but that's another subject. So these are sort of ballpark things. I think that the crisis is, I think it's a crisis, global crisis, and the absence of reference points, making new mutants out of our kids. They will not be able to question anything, hence they will not be human beings anymore. They might be happy, you get depressed, you take a pill. You can be happy again. But they won't be what, since the Greeks fought so hard to say what an individual is, they won't be that human being that says his or her own yes and no, a la Walt, Solzhenitsyn, and Havel, for quick examples. And their yeses and nos will be totally in the predictable arena.
So, well, that's Havel
and Solzhenitsyn.
Yeah.
And St. Paul, throw one in. As you read St. Paul, everybody forgets he's writing from jail most of the time. Wonderful words, and so is Havel, and so is Solzhenitsyn, and so is Valenza. They're all writing from jail, or talking from jail.
Did you put Mandela?
And Mandela,
in that group?
There's a lot of others. There's Joan of Arc, those are just PR names that I have great regard for. But if I were to really make my point, I would say that the most important revolutionaries have always been little old women with tennis shoes that carried on the fight when nobody else did, that you never heard of. But then we would have to understand a lot more what the fight is.
You started this line of thought, at least I'm new.
Yeah.
Is talking about how feeding people isn't enough, that they've got to be loved, out of Brother Karamazov.
Power to stay in power.
And talking about how that love's accomplished by the top-down power. And you started talking about spiritualism. You said one is spiritualism. I wondered if there was a two on that point, or whether you were going from there to, not just how top-down accomplishes that love, but how it ought to be. I mean, I'm just trying to.
Well, the other arena is propaganda. In the light of, to make my point here, it's not exact metaphor or something, but just when I say propaganda, that's absolutely essential today. Absolutely essential for any candidate, any office holder, any dictator. Propaganda is absolutely essential, not to show that he has the power that he has, or she, but to show how he loves them, or she loves them. And the example of that would be just to show you everything's reversed today. If somebody's talking about peace, they're about to make war. And the example of that is my quick example, top of my head, is be all you can be, which we see over and over and over and over as a recruiting PR for the military. Now, there's no place in the world that you can be less of yourself than in the military. You can only say yes and no to those below you. There's no way in hell you can say your own yes and no to those above you in rank and still not be in the stockade. You are a number the moment you enter in. Nobody gives a shit who you are. You better do your duty, and then you will get rewarded. Don't do your duty, you're going to get kicked. period. That's an example of what I mean of propaganda by power. Power has to make people believe they're loved when the opposite is the case.
Sounds like the military has made the perfect children.
Yeah.
I mean, they're always well behaved. They do what they're told.
Yeah,
they only take it out on those below them, and what we couldn't accomplish and really wouldn't want to accomplish with our own kids.
Yeah, I mean, you take up until recently, for about 20 years, IBM was the model of the corporate world on this illusion, on this propaganda. IBM took care of the family of the families. IBM was a place where you joined the family, and everything. You were covered by insurance if you were an in-law. You had a free health club pass. You could go swimming at noon. Your health was important to us. And we all know, and especially since restructuring, when all of a sudden the families weren't needed anymore, we all know that the name of the game was productivity. I might add, that is the answer to the world's quote revolutions, and that is more productivity. Left and right, third world especially. And that is not revolutionary. Quite the contrary. But that is a major subject. Okay.
I lost that a second. There's a lot coming out. I'm trying to follow one thought at a time. So say that again if you want me to understand it.
Well, I can't even remember, but productivity is the basis that the nation state, and any political leader knows this, the nation state has one, and a corporation. Okay, both. Multinational, both have the same goal. And it's spelled out a little differently, but to raise the standard of living, and you can't, of everybody, and you can't do that unless you're competitive and globally competitive. That's the name of the game. And a major subject fitting with that is that capitalism, a la Adam Smith, is long gone. Socialism, a la the Soviet Union, is long gone. And that is worth talking about, really worth talking about, both of those. Because what is not long gone is what we ought to be talking about. And why are those long gone? But all governments, if they don't raise in this global TV world, if they don't raise the standard of living of their constituents, they're out. You can no longer say, we're going to tighten our belts for the fatherland and for freedom, and have people believe you. Valencia stood up and said, that's bullshit. And take less pay per hour, and so forth and so forth. People today in the United States, actually, some studies they make more money and everything else per capita, per family, but they have less buying power. And the answer to that is more productivity. Now, what we will have to be talking about, you can't have more productivity when the answer to the world's meaning and needs is only economic. I'll guarantee you that is that is the direct result of that is demise of it's a guarantee of social underdevelopment. The loss of language, the loss of culture, the loss of individual rights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The more we promote productivity, and every country and every corporation, that's their only goal, raise the standard of living, raise profits. The more we do that, it's a guarantee of social underdevelopment in any way you want to shape it.
Yeah.
Democracy, everything.
My kind of handle on what you're saying is that productivity means that we consume more things, we have more things, and we have less time and less quality in what we do.
Yeah, I summarize that by saying that until we recognize that you can't be number one, you can't grow, because if a country, a corporation doesn't grow, it dies. You can't be competitive unless you're efficient, and efficiency is the opposite of human relations. Exact opposite. You can't have democracy, real democracy, and be efficient. The two don't go together. They're contradictions. And so going back to the propaganda has to make efficiency seem like and sound like democracy. I spent a summer in DDR, in the East German, the Democratic Deutsches Republic, the most undemocratic society one could possibly imagine. Citizens couldn't go to the next village without checking in with the police and getting permission first to go, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, in anything in life, it was totally undemocratic. And here it's called DDR, the Deutsches Democratic Republic. Come on, and that's everywhere in the Soviet sphere.
Well, saying the opposite of what you are.
Exact opposite of what
works there as well as here.
Yeah. Now, a major subject will be, that is not what the very, very, very fine and thousands of socialists fought for and wanted, particularly in the Eastern Zone. They were not led all over the place by hench people and by mafia and so forth. They were led by very, very caring people who paid with their lives, their families, and everything else, and really did have an ideology that they thought would liberate the proletariat.
Sure.
And the question is, where did they go wrong, which I think we ought to discuss. I just cannot believe, this is big for me, I never seen this anywhere. It just bothers me no end when for 50 years the entire world was in a Cold War, a war. I mean, sapping the energies and lives, because there was always at least 26 wars going on during that peacetime, sapping the energies of people in the whole world, from trillions of dollars, energies, God knows what, at the expense of everything that's decent in life. 50 years of both sides claiming the other one is evil and they're good, and meaning it, believing it, and dying for it, and killing for it, and paying for it, and developing mechanisms of destruction that's going to cost us trillions of dollars just to dismantle. and it might be too late to even do that before it totally harms the universe, the environment. What I'm getting at, the question is, what did we learn from that? 50 years of one hell of an experiment where we both arguments put everything they had into it. It elected presidents and dictators and killed people and the Angola, the whole kinds of things all over the world, in South America and everywhere. And what did we learn from it? Aren't we interested in? I mean, we're willing to do all these experiments on rats and stupid stuff, and here we have the biggest experiment in the world, that is what I spent about 12 years working on. That's big. Another major. Go ahead.
It's curious that the Cold War. I mean, if you take the taking down of the wall, it's kind of a symbol, and the literal just falling apart of the Soviet Union.
All over the world.
All over the world, socialism it was like, poof, you're gone.
In spite of the world's most powerful secret police, army, everything you can imagine.
It just evaporated in the course of, it seemed like it happened in a period of months. No, it
wasn't much more.
But
that literally.
My whole life was lived in the Cold War until, yesterday.
In which a couple billion people weren't even classified as a country. Go ahead.
And yet, it's like it was the driving force behind our whole society for so many years, and now nobody thinks about it.
It's
gone.
That's my point.
It's like, oh, the Cold War, that's history.
We won.
Yeah, my kids are gonna look at the Cold War like.
No question.
I look at the Civil War, or like
precisely. And this
World War
global. II. This is everywhere, and a third of the world's population was considered by the United States as non-existing, called China. Yeah. They weren't even a country.
That's right.
The country was Taiwan.
Nixon to make him a country.
Yeah, took Nixon to go over there and have tea with Mao and blew the Red Book off the face of the earth. I mean, the Red Book was in every street in Africa, South America, and Chicago. And memorized. Another major area, before I forget, has to do with the answer to the question almost, but it's a major subject. I happen to believe that the university is the culprit. Universities all over the world are a culprit here because everybody making every decision today is a university graduate. I won't even answer my own question right now, but why is it that these things cannot be discussed in any university? They cannot be discussed in any university. And a clue to that is you will not be successful in life unless, as you study more and more, you study more and more about less and less. You get farther and farther removed from what I call the big picture, the farther you go into research, development, and studies. You follow me? Mm-hmm. You're a postgraduate student, you're going to be studying the sex life of an Afghanistan beetle or something, and then you'll get your job. And then you will totally depend on the next expert for their little piece of it. and the next expert, the next expert. And there won't be any connections, but you have no other choice but to depend on all these specialists who are so far removed from where folks are at, it ain't funny. A word that we ought to be starting to use, I call the base, a Marxian word. There's no room for the base specialists. They're totally removed from it. I suspect, and the rest of a little bit of time this morning, I feel maybe we ought to. I would like if I think, I don't know, George, if you could by a Wednesday or Thursday in the week just throw out to me maybe one area that we work on for a while. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That you feel good with, and the rest of the time I'll throw out just some highlights of a weird life that I don't really know what it all means, but I do know that.
Let's talk about it. Yeah, I think it's a good idea because I don't think either one of us know where this is going, but I feel like this is fine.
Mm-hmm.
When I was walking down here this morning, I thought about it, over the last week or two, how to start. And, we may start some of those other ways as well. I'd like to get sometime just a chronology, which is,
why don't we throw that out quickly?
which is not exciting stuff. And some of it may not be interesting to you, but I also wanted to get an opportunity to see, because I've talked with you a lot over the years, and I wanted to get an opportunity to get in your words kind of some of the important stuff. And I'm going to go back and, listen to it, and, I've taken notes and think about it and pick up some of these things that we can spell out. And I guess it's, what I had in mind is a couple of kinds of things. Is there's a lot of substance, a lot of thought here. There's ideas that are important, that need to be spelled out. And then there's also events and kind of just where the ideas don't come from nowhere. They're connected to a life, to a
Can't separate Sunday and Monday.
That's right. No, I understand. And so the ideas themselves can't really be understood. It's like the students ask you, why do you do what you do? And the answer is not an idea necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
It's tied in. So I want to get both of that. I don't know, both of it's going to be interesting to you, but and I guess the other thing is not to feel like there's only a certain amount of time or something has to get accomplished or you have to spell everything out. I'm perfectly glad to listen to a bunch of scattered ideas and then to try to come back and spell them out over the course of some time.
Well, I thought I'd just rattle off a chronological picture. I want to say this, that I'm only now beginning to see for myself how certain little crazy little events, probably had some meaning in my life, it's all of our lives are crazy when we think about it. I mean, I went to work, this out of order here for a moment, but I went to work at 17 in a shipyard, 72 hours a week, in a world I knew nothing. And my lunch breaks and breaks and periods where I was told to hide in the bowels of an old dirty ship, because they didn't have anything for me to do for a while. I was an apprentice ship fitter, and but just to be corny for a second, that was my introduction to what sex is about, from a guy who went from one shipyard to another all his life, and what I heard, I couldn't believe. That was my introduction to the sex life, and how that influenced me the rest of my life, I have no idea, but that was my introduction. It wasn't mommy or daddy telling me what sex is about,
Well, you're probably better off having a sailor tell you what sex is about.
Oh, I'm not sure. All I knew is that I wasn't even close. And I had only known from my mother the word no. But I think important to me, particularly now, more than ever, beginning to sense certain things. As I very recently have had the occasion in Project Neighbors to deal with two men and women. I won't mention names here ever, but a black woman who comes from about as a rural southern background as you could possibly have, poverty, period, all the way, and abuse and everything else, and going with a black who's poor and a drug addict, but with a middle class upbringing, and the conflict in that family because of those two classes, both poor, both black, made me see my life. I came from a middle class aristocracy, or whatever you want to call it, background. My grandfather built the city of Tampa, and that's I got reams of stuff on that. It's most interesting. It's fantastic. He was a most unusual dude who could never stop working. Just we're in no time period here, so I might as well just say, we're two wealthy couple right now are looking at a historical site on Anna Maria Island near Longboat Key, which just discovered 4 years ago as a wooden, made out of cypress, wraparound porch, cottage, right on the Gulf of Mexico,